Hey everyone, it's Steven again. This time the Collector Store is going to be doing a little different video. We're actually going to begin doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Tips and tricks and other lessons on how to improve your dueling game. Many of you on YouTube probably don't realize this from all of our magic breaking videos, but we actually do a lot with Yu-Gi-Oh! We also do a lot of sports, precious moments, cherished teddy figurines, a lot of repkins, and we also do tons of Yu-Gi-Oh! We mostly just are getting into Magic just now. But we actually began doing these Yu-Gi-Oh! Classes in our store periodically, trying to help the younger players learn what the more advanced players already know. So in this video, we're actually going to begin by learning what's called card advantage, or card counting. Basically, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, a lot of young players don't realize this even exists. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Class that I taught, the first question I asked everyone was, how do you win in Yu-Gi-Oh? How do you typically win in Yu-Gi-Oh? And they all answered at the same time saying, get your opponent's life points down to 0. Well, that's right. But how do you tell when you're winning? And they all said at the same time, you look at life points. And that is absolutely not true. What you need to look at is card advantage. How many cards do you have on the field and in your hand combined versus your opponent? You could be at 8,000 life points and your opponent could be at 1,000. But if you only have 2 cards and your opponent has 5, you're probably losing. Or you're going to lose. So, I'm going to go ahead and try to put this video up there so that way everyone else can watch it and hopefully learn something from it. The kids that I taught thought the class was great and they really encouraged me to do this. They really wanted to see it on YouTube so that way they could watch it again in the future. So we're going to go in some pretty basic stuff at first, and then it's going to get a little bit more complicated as we go. And then I'm also going to have some questions that you can test your knowledge with, and the answers should be down below in the description. So let's go ahead and get started with a few basic examples. Alright, so let's begin first off by going over what is card advantage. Card advantage means that you have more cards in your hand and on your side of the field combined than your opponent does. Whenever you start a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You always start off with 5 cards in your hand. So you and your opponent are actually going to be tied in the beginning. But one of you are going to go first. And when you do go first, you get to draw on your first turn. No matter what. So whoever goes first in the game will have 6 cards to the opponent's 5, which means they are automatically starting to win, because they have more cards in their hand and on this side of the field than the opponent does. In this case, just by starting off the game, I have 0 cards on my field and 6 cards in my hand. That makes 6. 0 plus 6 equals 6. The opponent has none, and they'll have 5 cards in their hand. 0 plus 5. So, how exactly do we keep track of card advantage? Well, the most basic way to do it is simply by counting the field. So, if you're ever curious if you're actually winning or not, simply ask your opponent how many cards are in the hand. So let's say they say 3, and you already see 4 cards on this side of the field. Maybe 3 back row and a monster. That means they have 4 cards on this side of the field, 3 in their hand, that's 7. And then you check your side of the field. And if you have less than 7, you're losing, you're in danger. If you have the same, then the game could go either way. It all depends on what's actually on the field and what isn't. And then if you have more than 7, you're in a pretty good position, but you still have to make sure that your cards can win you the game and can defeat your opponent's cards. We're going to start off with a really basic card that pretty much everyone knows. Mystical Space Typhoon. This is probably one of the most popular cards in the game. All it says is destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. So, if my opponent has a set back row, and I activate Mystical Space Typhoon, well, activating Mystical Space Typhoon itself counts as 1, because this is 1 physical card. It costs me only 1 card to activate it itself, so it's a 1 card. My opponent doesn't respond, and I get to destroy their card. Now the card I destroyed was only 1 card, only 1, which means the Mystical Space Typhoon was a 1 for 1. So I didn't gain any advantage, but I didn't lose any advantage either. What I might have gained, however, was field control, because now that I destroyed the back row, maybe now I am more confident to attack, because now I got rid of the mirror force. Or maybe now I feel like I can summon, because I got rid of the Bottomless Trap Hole. So that's why Mystical Space Typhoon is so good, but it's not really good for card advantage. In fact, it can sometimes be really bad for card advantage. Say, for example, my opponent has a set Mystical Space Typhoon themselves. So don't forget, it's a quick play spell card. And so if I activate if I have a face down back row, my opponent has an MST face down on this side of the field, and I decide to destroy it. My Mystical Space Typhoon tries to destroy those. Those is then chained to destroy my back row face down. Well, I can't respond to this, it's nothing. So I'm just going to let it destroy it. Well, now my Mystical Space Typhoon, that cost me 1. And my back row was destroyed. That cost me 1. So overall I lost 2. And my opponent, only thing they spent was 1 Mystical Space Typhoon. So in this case, I actually lose 2 cards to the 1, which means now I'm probably losing advantage. And that's not a good thing. So let's get into some of the more complicated cards. First of all, let's look at cards like Heavy Storm and Dark Hole. Heavy Storm and Dark Hole are some of the more powerful cards in the game. Definitely more powerful than Mystical Space Typhoon, but you can only play 1 in a deck. Basically, Heavy Storm just says destroy all magic and trap cards in the field. Dark Hole says destroy all monsters in the field. Now, the reason why these get a little bit more complicated is because, let's say I want to activate Heavy Storm, and I have 2 back row face down. My opponent, however, has 4. So I activate Heavy Storm, and so now I have to figure out, okay, how much card advantage did I really gain out of this? Well, Heavy Storm only costs itself to activate, so that's 1. And then Heavy Storm is going to destroy all magic and trap cards in the field, so that's going to include mine as well. So I'm going to lose 2 plus the Heavy Storm because it's spent, so I'm losing 3 overall. 1, 2, 3. My opponent has 4 back rows though. So assuming they can't respond to it, they're going to lose 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So overall, I'm going to lose 3. They're going to lose 4. Well, 3 is less than 4 by 1, so I'm actually winning this by 1. Now, what gets a little bit trickier for players is, let's say I have 2 back row and they have 3. If I activate if I activate Heavy Storm, now how much card advantage am I gaining? Well, none. I'm losing the Heavy Storm in my 2 back row, and they're losing 3. So I'm losing 3, they're losing 3. So 3 minus 3 is 0. So I'm going to gain nothing except maybe field control. The reason why players get this confused so often is because when they do the math, they just look at the field as it is. 2 and 3. So usually they assume, oh, well, I'm going to lose 2, they're going to lose 3, so overall I'm going to gain 1. But they're forgetting that Heavy Storm also cost 1. It's important to keep in mind that the card that you're activating is going to cost you something, let alone the other things that you're going to lose in the process. One good example of this is cards that make you discard things, such as Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness doesn't actually cost anything to activate, but it does require you to remove from play a dark monster in your hand after it's done resolving, or else you're going to lose your entire hand, which obviously you're not really wanting to do. So it says, draw 2 cards, then remove from play 1 dark monster from your hand. If you don't have any dark monsters in your hand to remove, send all cards in your hand to the graveyard. So what does this mean? Alright, so let's say I already have 3 cards in hand and Allure of Darkness. I play the Allure of Darkness. The Allure of Darkness is going to cost me 1, because that's all it takes to activate. Then I get to draw 2 new cards. Alright? So now my hand size is 5, but I'm not done yet. Now I have to remove from play a dark monster from my hand, and now I'm back down to 4. So, overall, how much card advantage did I gain? Remember, I started off with 4, activated a lure, drew 2, but then I have to remove from play a dark monster, so I'm back down to 4. So in reality, I didn't gain anything. Maybe I got some better cards in my hand because the Lure of Darkness allowed me to draw some new cards that I could actually use in the duel, but I didn't actually gain any card advantage. So unless I drew something really good off that Lure of Darkness or something else to give me card advantage, or even to set off a combo, I'm probably not going anywhere. That's why Lure of Darkness isn't as good as, let's say, Pot of Greed. Pot of Greed says just simply draw 2 cards. Well, Pot of Greed doesn't cost anything to activate. Pot of Greed doesn't require you to discard or remove from play anything when you're done with it. So Pot of Greed literally adds 1 card in your hand overall, because Pot of Greed costs 1 and it adds 2. 2 minus 1 equals 1. A Lure of Darkness, however, costs 1 and then makes you remove from play 1, which means it's overall costing 2, and you're only drawing 2. 2 minus 2 equals 0. Alright, now, let's get to some more advanced plays, such as with Dark Bribe. Dark Bribe is becoming more popular in our local area. Dark Bribe is a counter trap card that says, negate the activation and effect of opponent's spell or trap card and destroy it. Your opponent draws 1 card. Alright. So, what's going to happen is if I set Dark Bribe face down, and my opponent activates Mystical Space Typhoon on it, do I want to chain Dark Bribe? The obvious answer is no. What's going to happen is Mystical Space Typhoon cost 1, Dark Bribe cost 1. I'd rather just let them be destroyed. Because what happens if I chain with Dark Bribe? Dark Bribe would negate the Mystical Space Typhoon, making it worthless. But they get to draw a card. So now, instead of costing 1, it costs them 0 because they add a card to the hand. The card advantage never dropped. Meanwhile, Dark Bribe costs 1 to activate, doesn't add anything to my hand. So overall, I'm actually going to lose 1 card. So, it's better to let the Dark Bribe be destroyed. But let's say, for example, I have 4 back row, including the Dark Bribe. My opponent has nothing in their back row, and they activate Heavy Storm. Heavy Storm is going to allow them to gain a +3 card advantage, because this is costing them 1, and then they're going to destroy 3 of my cards. Well, what I would do then is I would activate the Dark Bribe, because Dark Bribe would negate the Heavy Storm, and although it adds a card to their hand, so they're actually losing 0, I'm only losing 1. So I'm saving 3 of my cards, and the Heavy Storm is going away. So, they still only have 1 on this side of the field, but now I have 3 on mine. Whereas before, I would have had none, and they would have had none. So, instead of it being 1 for 4, it ended up being 0 for 3. So, I actually will have more advantage by Dark Bribing and letting that Heavy Storm be free than I would if I simply let all of them be destroyed. That's when Dark Bribe is really good. It's also good in certain scenarios where it's necessary to save your things. Let's take a look at a more complicated example where Dark Bribe becomes really good. Let's say my opponent has 1 set back row. And let's say this Dark Bribe is in my 6 Samurai deck. Alright. So, I might end up summoning him while also summoning him. This is a 2-star tuna 6 Samurai monster. This is a 3-star 6 Samurai monster. And let's say I decide to synchro summon for Legendary 6 Samurai Shien. A very powerful 6 Samurai synchro monster that allows me to do a lot of nasty things to the opponent. So this 6 Samurai Shien cost me 2 cards to bring him out. So he costs 2 cards. Now he didn't cost anything from my hand, so he himself might be 0, but he still costs 2 material to come out. So he's an art. So with me only getting 1 card off of him, he's a -1. I got 1 by paying 2. So he's a -1, but his effect is worth it. My opponent might activate Solemn Judgment, which allows him to negate the summoning of any monster that's being played. This way, my opponent will only lose 1, and he will destroy 1. Which in other words, he's losing 1 to get rid of 2. So he's going to be gaining a +1 off of this overall, and I'm going to be losing field control. That's when I might want to use Dark Bribe. Because Dark Bribe will make the Solemn Judgment become nothing because the opponent's going to get a card to the hand. But I get to keep my Shien. So now it costs me 3 cards to keep Shien on the field, so it's still a -2. And my opponent didn't neg themselves at all, they got 0. But I still have field control. Card advantage is a really great way to tell how the game is going. It's not the end-all. It doesn't mean that you're going to win per se. And it doesn't always mean that you have to keep the card advantage in order to win the duel. That's where strategy comes in, and it takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice in figuring out how to do it the right way. Now, this is probably the last example I'll talk about. It's called floaters. Floaters is just basically mumbo jumbo for meaning cards that don't cost you anything, but they're still on the field. So let's take a classic look at 6 Samurai United. All right. No. Let's take a look at classic Gateway of the Six. Gateway of the Six is a very powerful 6 Samurai card. It has a very complicated effect. I don't know if you can read it on there. But basically it says, each time a 6 Samurai monster is normal or special summoned, place 2 counters on this card. You can remove counters from anywhere on your side of the field to activate these effects. And one of the effects is, remove 4 counters, add 1 6 Samurai monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. Okay, so this is where floaters begin. So, this card, Gateway of the Six, cost me 1, because it itself is 1. If I then normal summon Kaigeki, so legendary 6 Samurai Kaigeki, this will get 2 counters on it. And he cost me 1 to play, but I'm also gaining 1 in the field, so overall he's a 0. Overall he's a 1. It's just a 1. Then his effect allows me to special summon a 6 Samurai monster from my hand. I'm going to special summon Kakamushi, the 6 Samurai, and when it's special summon, this gets 2 counters more. So now I can remove the 4 counters from it to search my deck for any 6 Samurai monster I choose. And ideally, I'm going to choose Legendary 6 Samurai Kazun, or I might choose Grandmaster the 6 Samurai. Both are good choices. And then this gets added to my hand from my deck. So this card produced me 1 card advantage, because I didn't have, let's say, Grandmaster the 6 Samurai before my hand. So now it paid for itself. This is now a 0. It's a floater. If they destroyed this card later on with, let's say, Mystical Space Typhoon, Mystical Space Typhoon will actually be a -1, which means -1. They're going to lose 1, because it cost them 1 to play Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy Gateway. The Gateway already paid for itself. Remember, it gave me Grandmaster. So Gateway would be destroyed, but they would lose card advantage, because I still have my Grandmaster. They don't have any card replacing the Mystical Space Typhoon, though. Now, the reason why Gateway of the Six is limited to 1 and is so powerful is because it can become even better than just floater. Because, see, now what I could do is I can synchro summon these two for legendary 6 Samurai Shien. Well, remember, Shien cost me 2 to play, but he himself counts as 1, so he's actually a neg 1. Gateway of the 6 will now get 2 counters because a 6 Samurai was special summoned. And now I'll special summon Grandmaster using his own effect. And now this has another 2 counters. Now it has 4. I can remove those 4 and search again. Maybe this time I'll search for legendary 6 Samurai Kizun. So now this goes to my hand. Now Gateway of the 6 not only paid for itself by getting me a Grandmaster, but also it produced me an additional card. So now it's actually a +1. So now it's really good. Not only does my opponent need to still worry about destroying it, but it's already made profit. It's not even a floater. So now I could special summon Kizan from my hand. It'll get another 2 counters. And then I can play Monster Reborn, which costs 1, but it's going to produce me 1. So now this is actually a 1-for-1, so it's 0. And then I get another 2 counters on Gateway, and then I can use this effect again. And this time I can search for another Kizan. Another one. And add it to my hand. And I can still keep going, because Gateway of the 6 has now produced me 2 cards. 2. But I can still keep going. I can now special summon Kizan, get 2 more counters, and then Exceed summon for the Exceed 6 Samurai monster. And I could then have 4 counters on it again, search again, get more monsters, and I could just keep going until I run out of combos. All off of 1 card. So I went from having just the 3, technically 4 because I used Monster Reborn, so I went from having 4 to having one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Went from 4 to 6. Very powerful. Very powerful. So, that's why Gateway of the 6 was so good. And still is, actually. It's not as fast as a lot of the other decks nowadays, but it was amazing when it was at 3. It was way too good. And it's still really good today. So, when you build your decks, when you play the game, keep in mind card advantage. It's extremely important. And as long as you keep it in mind, you will be able to tell when you're winning or losing, when to destroy cards, when to negate things. It really does help your game a lot. Hope you find this helpful. Be sure to subscribe to future videos. We'll be trying to make more little tips and tricks on how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! So that way you can compete with the pros at your shop. Or if you're already a pro, then maybe you'll find this helpful as well and improve your game a little bit more. Become best of the best. Thanks for watching. Happy dueling, good luck, and see you next video.